So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next monthly webinar in the series that I'm running this year. We are covering today the reporter within the Opera 3 module. So just doing me introductions is, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Bruce Kidd. I run the sales and marketing here at Oasis, but of course I've been involved with Opera 3 and Opera since I've been here, which is about 17 years at this point in time. So that is myself. Then our little agenda is we're just going to have a look at what the module Opera 3 reporter is, look at the creating and editing of reports, and then we're going to do a bit of a demo around the subject of reports and how you run through them. So to say Opera 3 reporter, within most modules, there are standard report commands, and you guys would know that. You've got reporter within all the modules that you use, most of which provide criteria selection procedures. Although these standard reports can satisfy most requirements, you may have to build other reports that you want to produce based on the data that's contained within your database. And that's where this reporter module comes in. There are two parts to this module. You have the reports manager, and then of course you have your reports and the lists that goes with them. We use this report manager then to command to create and manage our report designs. These are additional designs we want within our system. The reports command then provides a list of all these reports that we've designed, and we can use this list to select and run these reports when we want, which extract the information that's stored in our company database. And this is in real time, I must say, at this point in time. The reporter module is therefore designed to allow the user, that's yourself, myself, to generate our own reports very quickly, quite easily, and then we can save this report definition so it can be printed at any time and used. So some characteristics of this, it's very easy to use. So by use of cursor keys, mouse controls, reports can be designed by making selections from drop-down lists. We'll see that when we use that shortly. Also, it gives you access to all your data. It's very flexible. It's very efficient because reports can be printed in a batch. Designs are shared across all your companies in your system. It's secure. Only users are provided with access to these database files, which are compatible with their own menu modules. And extendability, the database can be extended to include tables and fields used by third-party applications. So if you've got some development or bespoke on your system, you'll be able to use the information by pulling it into the reporter module. The report module is accessible from the navigator, and it can be protected from use by denying access on a user-by-user basis to the menu item. Just to mention, when your user have restricted access to modules within your system, then the reporter module will reflect the restrictions. So if someone doesn't have access to payroll, for example, they won't be able to build payroll reports in the reporter module because those won't be available for them. So that's just a really quick overview of the module and what it does. Next, I want to talk about creating and editing reports within the system. I think the most important thing about designing this report is one of the first steps you take is to identify the data elements in your company database on which the report content is going to be based. Before you start to create your first report design, you may wish to take a little time to learn about the principles of the database and the terminology we have used in the documentation. The application stores your company information in a database, and the database is broken into module databases that in general corresponds to the modules you have. And within each of these modular categories, the main files corresponding to the modules are separated. The selection you make determines what is available within the design of the report that's already stored in the database. It's known as the report base. Really what it's telling us is you select the base of your report if it's payroll, and then within that payroll area, you select the fields that you want to see on your report. You can customize some of these fields, you can do calculations, you can do formulas, and we'll see that when we do it in a second. Once you selected the report base, you can choose from a list of fields, and these fields has names that identify the information it holds. So all the information that your system holds are held in tables, sorry, and within these tables are fields, and each field holds information. And this is what we report on effectively from our reporter. It goes on to tell us about how the fields represents one column of information on a report, and we can actually, through the formula and the construction, take different fields, add them together, and give one result in a field. And again, I will show you that when we do that. So you could add columns that calculates. For example, the example here is where, for example, you can put a commission area that is a percentage of an existing sales value, for example, and therefore create a report that pulls out commission for your salespeople. It follows a straightforward process within the system, as in all Opera systems, and you begin with the report manager form, and this contains a number of tab dialogues, each covering a stage in the design process. And that's just very quick, a bit of theory about how we're going to build these reports. Now, the next step is we're going to go through these stages, building a new report, and we're going to do that in Opera as we go through it. So to create a new report design, here we've got our reporting area, here we've got our reporter module, and we've got our reports manager, a report manager. I'm going to open that up, and what we get first is our general screen. To create a new report, we open this folder, then we click on the new item menu like we do in Opera. It gives us a blank page, and then we need to start filling the information in of what we want to do. The report name, for starters, is a unique name you give to your report that could be whatever you need it to be. It can indicate what you are trying to achieve through the report. For example, let's just build a payroll report to start with, which is a list report of all my current payroll employees. So I'm just going to call my report payroll 1, for example. Current employees list is a report title I give to that. The menu hotkey is if I give it a letter like C, for example, when I run the report, I can use just the letter C as a hotkey that would run the report for me. The report type here, I have a detailed list and I've got a summary list. Well, the detailed list is going to pull out each line of information that I want to have in my report. If I select a summary list there, it will summarize the information and put it together as a summarized field for me. So let's say it pulls out a bunch of transactions for the same customer. It might summarize it for the sales of 1 month, depending on how I've set that up. But that's what the summary list does. I'm going to keep it on a detailed list for now. And then the orientation, well, how do I want to see this? A portrait or a landscape? I'm just going to go on a landscape for now. Then I've got a couple of options here at the bottom. I've got show my deleted records and I've got Excel output. Show deleted records is if I run the report, do I want to see any delete records that has been deleted within my report? And the Excel output is when I run the report and I see the publisher come up, I have the option of selecting the Excel output at the top. I'm going to select that on because it gives us that option to run the report to Excel when we need to. Now, carrying on from our first stage is our next stage, and that goes on to the tab at the top, which is the basis of our report. So firstly, we need to select what base our report is on. Now, I said I wanted to build a report on current employees. I'm going to find my payroll list. I'm just going to press on the P. It can go down the list, or I can find it here, and here I can see I'm starting to get my payroll information. I can look at my payroll W name, which we know is the name payroll employees name list. And immediately by selecting that report base, on the left-hand side, I have all the fields available that I can report in within that report base that I've set. You can see I've got here the employee information, I've got cost center information, I've got additional optional information here that relates to pensions and everything. I've also got the profile here, so the employee profile I can report on, which groups they are, what departments they're from, bank details, training, everything that sits here within that payroll base I am able to report on. So I'm just going to pull out my employee reference, and as you can see, all you do is you double click on the field, it throws it on the field selected side. I want to see surname, I want to see forename in there. I might want to see the employee's tax code. Are they month one or not? Shall it pull out their national insurance code and number? Perhaps I don't want the NI code. I can double click on it and move it back this way. And perhaps I will pull out. Yeah, let's start with that. That gives me a full list of my employees I have. I can now carry on next on to my stage 3, where I can look at my fields. The fields is all those I've selected currently in my previous stage 2 in the basis. Here I can take these fields, I can pull them up or down, I can change the order in which they come. If I highlight a field here on the right hand side, that information represents that field. So it tells me the employee field is the reference number. I might want to change that to say pay ref. 20 characters is long enough for that. I don't want to play with the expression because that is where it takes this information from. The stretch information means if the reference is longer than the 20 characters, will it stretch the field and basically allow the information all to be printed. If I don't stretch it and it goes longer, it just cuts the information off. The repetition column, if I have a list of information or a list of transactions, for example, that pulls the same information out, I can say I want to suppress the repetition. And I'll show you that later when we look at a nominal report. Suppressing the repetition means it won't print the same number, for example, the same nominal code for each transaction. It will just give it one, suppress the rest of them, and put the new one in when the next one starts. And again, I'll show you that when we go. The extraction is if you only want to extract the first 5 or the last 10 or the middle 7 characters of the information, then you can do so by selecting here what you want to pull out. The sequence, well, in which order do I want to see this? Well, let's go with pay reference order, perhaps. On change, so if it's a report, I can tell it, well, firstly, which direction I want it to go in, but on the change is what do I want to do? When that pay reference change, do I want to print a subtotal, or do I want each of those to be on a new page? In this, I just want to list at this point in time, so I'm not going to do that for that one there. But I can also do a secondary sort key, so I can say by pay reference and then by surname. So it will give me the reference first and then the surname alphabetically. The criteria tab is where I can run information when I run this report, for example. I could select any of the fields I have, and then I've got some rational operations. So if I only want to look at pay references higher than a certain number, I can say greater than or greater than equal to a constant of, for example, and when I run the report, it will only give me information where the payroll reference is higher than 0001, for example. I'm not going to put one in here, and when we look at another report, it will be more evident how you can use that. At this point, we'll go to the export tab. What the export tab gives us is how do I want to export this report? If I run the report, what do I want to do with it if I export it? Firstly, the export format. I've got loads of formats here I can export this file into. So you can see you can pull information here that might fit other systems that you might want to import into. The most used is for us is the XL5, XLS version 5, or the trusty old CSV up here at the top. What happens then is the file name becomes available, and when you can see is it puts a path there of where it's going to save that information. So this is my laptop name. That's the name of the folder, the share folder it's going to find. It's the data, the Z export, and it's going to create a report. If I export it, that's called payroll 1. It asks me here if it exists, what do I want to do? So if I've run this report every week, every month, however I do that, when I run it next time, what do I want to do with the report that exists there already? Do I want to overwrite it? Do I want to append it? So just add to it, or do I want to merge it? I'm just going to select overwrite. And at this point, I'm going to output all records. I can save my report now. And probably for the first time, we can preview that. We've built our report. Now's the first time we can go and have a look. In my action button, on any of the screens I am in, doesn't matter. On the action button, I can click on the preview. It brings up my preview box. I've got some options here. Firstly, the export option. If I select export, it's going to run the report based on the export information I've put in there. If I run report, it's going to pop up my publisher that we know in Opera 3, and it's going to give me options. I'm going to use that on this report. Now, remember on the front screen, we selected to have an Excel output. That means in here now, I can select an Excel report. I can give it a name, and I can run that report. And now this report I have built is going to run the information into Excel for me. It should open an Excel file for me and present me with the information I've just built in that report. Now, this is starting with a list of all my employees. I've not broken it down per group. I've not decided who is a current employee, who has left my employment. This is really just a full list I've pulled out based on that information. Now, I've got a report. I've built a new report, and we'll do another one in a moment. But now I've got a report. I want to perhaps edit that report. Well, it's pretty straightforward. Within my list, I find the report I want to edit. I'm going to edit this one I've been looking at. And now I can come back to the basis. I can decide I want to add the leaver status, because I want to know if this person have left our employment or not. And I might want to put in the leave date, should they have left. Okay, I can save that now. I've got that information in there. Let's put my preview on, have a quick report look. This time I'm just going to pop it to the screen just to show you the different options. You can look at the report. It's given me the information I've wanted in the order I wanted it to be. I see that, now you can go back and you can edit the fields. I decide the surname, the forename fields are way too big. I don't want to see that. Also, what I really don't want to see here, I don't want to see anybody who's a leaver, because this is a current employee list. So let's go back and just change those couple of bits here. In my fields, in the surname, the field is a 62 length. I've just seen it's way too big. I can change that to a 50. I'm going to do the forename the same. I'm going to change that to a 50. And also, actually, I want to see the forename before the surname. I can save that. In my criteria, I'm going to go with this leaver status. I'm going to say not equal to, and we saw there was an H in that field, and those fields where the levers are. I'm going to say not equal to H. I don't want to see anything with an H in my criteria. If I run my report now, and again, I'm just going to quickly run it to screen to show you, we now don't have any levers here there with an H in there. So I can further now carry on and decide I also don't want to see those with a D in my list and keep on carrying on building my report. Once I've had my report built, and I want to make this report available to everybody because not everybody can perhaps run the reporter module or can come in here. In my action button, I've got an option that says append to menu. If I click that option, it says, are you sure you want to append this report to the payroll miscellaneous reports menu? I can say, yep, I certainly want to do that. And now it's telling me it's been added to my miscellaneous reports menu. And I must relog on to activate it. So let me just do that. Log on again. And when I log in now, I'm going to go over to my payroll report, payroll processing area. In my miscellaneous reports, now here at the bottom, I have my current employees list. I can now run this from there. I can run that as an export. As you can see, it's run that for me. This is where it exports to. That's the, if you remember, that's the path we set. And that report now sits here as a CSV. I can run it. This time the report is in a different Excel format when it exports than to when you run it to Excel. So as you can see here, it's just given me the information that is contained within my report, run to that area. When I run it again, it will overwrite that report. So going back to my reporter, I want to cover something within the nominal ledger, for example. So what I did was already created a current year trial balance, for example, or a profit and loss for the current year. So I'm not going to build a new one, but I'm going to talk you through how you would do should you have built this, just so that we understand all the areas again. So I'm going back to my general area, and this time I'm looking at an accounts report, so something from my nominal ledger. I'm going to look at my profit and loss, for example. So I've got my report type set as a detailed list because I don't want to summarize the information. I want to see all the transactions, all the information, all the accounts that makes up what I want to see in this report. I've set it as a landscape report because I think it might go a little bit wide, but I've also set it as an Excel output because I have suspicion that the amount of fields I want to select in this report might go beyond an A4 piece of paper. I've selected my report basis as the nominal ledger and the accounts within the nominal, because what I want to pull out is a profit and loss. And we know profit and loss in Opera and Pegasus is built around my type and my subtype. So I've pulled out from the accounts, the types and the subtypes. I've pulled out the type description, the subtype description, the account code, the cost center. I pulled a description for that out, and then I pulled out a debit year to date and a credit year to date. Now I had to do that because in Opera, in Pegasus, the way the information is stored against these accounts, it stores it as a debit or a credit. So it doesn't store it as a balance, one field you can pull out. But what I can then do is use here at the bottom one of my formula or constructs, and I've selected the formula field there to pull out the balance. Now that was a formula I put in the bottom. You'll see that's why I put 2 in. I'll stick that one in there just to show you how we've gotten to what I did. So I've selected the fields I wanted from here, you know, through opening up here and finding the information I want to pull out. Coming over to our fields, I then pulled these into the order I want. I changed the description fields to something more reasonable from 62 to 35. I did that for all of them. You will also note that I pressed suppress on the type description, on the subtype description. I don't want to see that information repeat itself 100 times. That's why I've done that on this information. The debit and the credit year to date, I selected a repetition of print. That's fine. But I want to show you in this instance, when there's a value column you've selected, you have the ability to count, to sum, to average, to minimum or maximum. So you can pull out the count, so the number of records. You can sum them together. You can average the records. You can pull out the minimum record in the level or the maximum record, the maximum value in the string. I just want to add them all together. I've done that for both of theirs. Now, this is where I just want to show you, and this is a really good trick. When you've selected the formula field, you know what you want to do. When I selected the formula field, I wanted to take the debit and the credit, pull them together and give me a balance effectively. So in Opera, I take the year-to-date the year-to-date credit, and I take it off the year-to-date debit. But that sounds really complicated. So if I take my expression, when I selected a formula, I take my expression, I can say question mark minus question mark. I know the balance is two fields I need to deduct from each other. If I select enter on that, the first thing that pops up, it says to me, select the expression field 1 of 2. So what is the first expression I want to deduct here? That was our year-to-date credit year-to-date. Select the first one. Now it's telling me select the expression 2 of the field. That would be my debit year-to-date. What it then does, my expression, it takes those two, that's the first one, minus the second one, and it's put it in there now for me. I'm going to call this balance 2. And the total column, yeah, let's sum this together too. I'm going to save that. In my sequence, I've put it as type because I want to see the type as my sequence that I want to see this in. When the type changes, I want to print a subtotal. So every time the type changes from sales to cost of sales, for example, I want to see a subtotal printed for that. And then in my criteria, I've had to do something interesting because the type contains all the information, all the types, the balance sheet types, the profit and loss types, everything is contained within the types. So knowing the nominal structure that you have, you might want to say, like I did here, I said, I want to pull out my type greater than equal to. So basically from and to. I want to pull up my type 30, which I know is sales, to 45, which is overheads. But I also don't want to see the balance. You know, the balance is going to calculate. I don't want that to be 0 because if I print every single transaction that's got a 0 value in that report might be huge. And I've saved that. So I think if we preview this report, and perhaps I'll do it as let's do it as a report to my Excel. This is my PL1 report. Publish it. And there it started to doing interesting things that I wanted to do. So firstly, I want to mention my type 30 is my sales. That's what the description is next to it. My type 35 is my cost of sales. 45 is my expenses and overheads. So as you can see, I cut that one off. I set the size, and now it's cut the information off, even if I pull it bigger. But the fact that 30 didn't print over there, sales didn't print over there, that was the suppress option that we selected. The same there and the same there. Because we suppress the information, it doesn't keep on printing me the same thing over and over. Also, when I selected the sequence, I said I wanted it by type. And when the type changes, I want a subtotal, and that's what it's done here for me. It's given me a subtotal when it changes from 30 to 35, which is my cost of sales. Again, a subtotal when it changes to 45, and all the information contained in there. Now, as just playing with this information, there is the balances of the two fields, which is exactly the same, which I've built a second ago, just to show you that it pulls the right information out. And then, of course, you can build on this report. You can build anything from here. You can copy the report. If you like the base of the report, you can use the copy functionality here at the bottom of Opera. You can copy a report. You can call it a next name. And what it does is it brings that report to from me with everything I have currently set. And now I can start saying, okay, perhaps I shall change that to run a balance sheet report or a profit and loss just for my sales types, for example. But then I have the ability to edit the report. I don't have to rebuild and select all the fields, and I can do that. One of the reports I asked my team in the office that many people use, and I know there's a lot of payroll users on here today, was a new starters report. I mean, that's very straightforward here because you select your new starters and select your selections there. On the basis you select the W name report, you pull out the normal information, the reference, the name, the surname, the NI code, whatever you want to, but you can then pull out the start date and the leave date. And in the fields, you can do some selections on those. I want to sequence this by start date because I might want to put out new starters from a different period in time. And the criteria is exactly what I've said here. I said I want to pull out a start date that's greater than or equal to a runtime variable this time. A runtime variable means that when I run the report, I select what that variable is, what the start date is. I select what that is when I start the report. So I've saved that. Let's preview that report. And when I select on report, this is where this criteria can come in, because I said a runtime variable. So at the point of running this report, what new starters do I want to see? I might want to see everything that everyone who started, where are we today? The first of this year, for example. Say okay to that. My report would build. I can stick it to Excel or whatever I want to do. I'm just going to put it to my screen this time. And it's going to pull out for me the two new starters I had in that period. I also, unfortunately, they also left in the same period, but they were new starters then. I could, of course, filter my report to exclude anybody that has already left my employment. In this instance, I wouldn't have had anybody on my report then. But I can run that for a much longer period in time because my data exists within my system. So this is everybody that started employment with me from the start date of the 1st of the 1st, 2010. Obviously, leave dates, a bunch of them are still working for me. So there we go, just to mention that. I think that takes care of running these reports, building these reports. I think within the criteria area, perhaps there are a from and tos you can run by having this information where it will pop up when you run the report and it says date from and to. For example, I can do an and statement there. I can select my start date as well. And this time I'm going to say less than equal to runtime variable, start date 2. I'm going to save that. And now when I run my report, I get 2 fields, which start date from. I want to, which start date to. And it will then give me the information based on that criteria I set. And it will show on my report here at the top what I've done. So as you guys can see, it's very flexible. You can get a lot of information out of the reporter and with the ability to append it to the menu, which means that within here, you can now come and you will be able to run reports like this one I built, for example. In there, I can come in here, I can build my sales budgets report. This is a massive report in the sense that I pulled 12 periods out along. I can't even think about the fact that this is going to run on a paper, so I have to run this to an Excel sheet. And I just want to show you again as a report. This one is based on the sales transactions on the sales table. And nominal tables to pull out any budgets I have on my sales accounts. This is all just sales. So this might be a budget sheet I want to give to my sales team to say this is the budgets we have. Of course, I can pull the sales into this too so that they can see what the actual sales to the budgets were on this. So very powerful reporting. So I think that is fair to say that covers all of that. But as a reminder, I put on the PowerPoint suggestive information about this, how to build a report, some of the steps you take on there. And then I've gone through and I've just shown each of the screens. And hopefully, you know, that will serve as a reminder when you look at the information or what you do at each of these screens and how you get the information. Of course, you'll be able to listen back to the recording as well to see this. So this just shows you all of the information again, and that was it. That's the demo of the reporter module and everything that goes with it. Now I'll open the floor. Please undo your mics if anybody can see any other information here. Can we see some payroll data figures like gross? Yes, you can. Now there are about 70 value fields around payroll with everything from statutory payments to everything else in between there. So we could pull any of that information out. I would probably suggest using something like the payroll. Where is it? Payroll transactions file. So just very quickly, some of that I'm going to not sequence. I'm going to sequence it in reference with no action taken. I'm not going to set a criteria. Let's just save that very quickly as an Excel output, preview that as a report, as an Excel report. Let's just see. So what this would have done now is all those fields are selected, all the value fields against the transactional information. And there's probably quite a few, so uh, excuse me that the system is just hanging for a second, but here we go. So it's just pulled out for me. That's employer reference with the payee code, what the values were, what the this period value were, if there were any calculations or to date balances are, but that's just a couple of them. I mean, I can pull gross pay out for that, gross taxable pay, all of that information is available, and I can just literally pull it out and it can sit against this report. For me. I can add the next to the employee, I can add name details through the fields, through the basis here. I can pull the W name, always will be that. Can stick the surname in there, pull it up. I can further play with any of the value fields, as you can see, to date this period, sick days, taxable pay, tax paid, pensions paid, all that information, because it's all calculated in your then. And then you've got things like your net pay, your gross pay, this period, gross and net pays. I'll just stick any of that information on there. And when we run this report now again, it will have pulled that information together for us. So um, I think it's just a starting point of playing with it and starting to select the fields. I mean, you can't break anything, if that makes sense. You can just try and build these reports, and if there's nothing, it's going to tell you can't run it. There's no data, or you haven't made a incorrect selection. So here you can see I've just added the surname now, and it's given me information on these transactions, and it's added the gross periods, this period values, if there was anything for my employees or for the groups. I might not have done everybody yet, so it's demo data anyway. So there you go. I hope that helps. So anything else from anybody? Then I'm going to say thank you very much for listening and for watching today. Please throw me any questions via email. I can always try and help regarding the reporter. Just a reminder, if you pop on over to the customer zone, you'll see these webinars, how I've planned them. I'll be adding some more for next year, and a wider range of subjects, including our CIS product. Also, if you go to the news page on our website, you will find the recording of each and every of the previous webinars I've run. If you click on the right-hand side on Oasis webinars, you'll find a full list of them, and you'll be able to look back on all the areas I've covered so far. Next month, on the last Thursday of the month, 31st of August, we're going to be tackling Opera 3 stock and the bill of materials part, because I think a lot of people wants to use that and needs to know how to. So thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Thank you.